Hi everyone, it's great to see you. Today we have an important update on the geranium plants that I had planted as seeds a while ago. And well, you can tell that something is not quite right with these. So I have 2.5 trays of geranium seeds here. These 3 rows are impatiens, and they seem like they're doing okay. But the geraniums, you're going to notice that a lot of them have red leaves. And geraniums are not supposed to have red leaves like this. So when your geranium plants start to get red leaves like this, it's a signal that they're in distress for some reason. And then as the plant grower, you have to figure out why they are in distress. And that is the tricky thing. So they were doing really well. They were really green. And then I noticed that one tray started to get a few red leaves. Now, usually there are 3 reasons why your geranium plants might start to get red leaves. One could be that it's too cold. Okay, so these are in the breezeway. They did initially have heat mats there, but it's heated. We do open and close the door to it a bit. I wasn't really worried about that. The other 2 reasons are either you're not giving them enough water or you're giving them too much water. So I had a 50-50 chance. Now, knowing from past habits of mine, I tend with indoor plants to forget to water them. So if I'm going to choose one, didn't give them enough water or gave them too much water, I usually figure, something happened, I didn't water them enough. And that's what I decided I would treat first. Now, you'll notice that these are in the Grow Ease kits from Gardener's Supply. I've had great luck with these. And if you lift this off, so you can see we have our wicking mat here, and it is really wet. There's still a little water underneath it, and you're even going to notice that it's growing a little mold here. Now, it wasn't growing mold when I first checked, and I thought, maybe it just isn't enough. So you add more water underneath, and I left them to see what would happen. Well, they started getting more red, so I added more water just in case. And well, it's not going well. Even my healthiest plants here are starting to turn red. So now I'm thinking, too much water. Oh my goodness. So let me tell you what I think about these, because there are some that haven't turned as red as the other. And I've been having an oscillating fan on these for part of the time, and I'm noticing that the tray that was closest to the fan, that would have dried out fastest, are the ones that were doing best. And that those that were far away from the fan they probably stayed moist longer. So that supports this theory too. Now you're also going to notice some white on top here. At first I thought that was all mold. It is not all mold. I did coat these with vermiculite originally, but as I look carefully here, some of this white is the vermiculite and some is mold. So if your seedlings start to grow mold on top, also a sign it's a little too moist. So it's really interesting because Laura from Garden Answer this year said up until this year she's used the Grow Ease packs like this, and she was starting to think it was keeping some of her seedlings too wet. And so this year she stopped using the wicking mat and just put them in the bottom. And I thought, I don't have that problem at all. Well, evidently I do have that problem. So I'm going to do what she did and take them off the wicking mat. The other thing is this soil is just like too wet now. So I think I'm going to try to take these out, shake off some of the wet soil, the wet growing medium that I have here, and put in just a very slightly damp new set of growing potting mix and I think that'll give them sort of a fresh start. And hopefully I can catch some of these before they get root rot. That is the question. Did I save them soon enough or not? But we do have some green left in here. I think there's hope. So let's see how it's gonna look. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on gloves because this is probably going to get a little messy. And then, okay, I'm going to take the top part off. I'm going to pull the wicking mat off, which, oh yeah. You know what? These three are we're just going to say goodbye to those for now. And we're gonna look in the bottom. This still has a lot of water. I'm gonna dump that. And I just rinsed that out a bit. Let's try this one here. Oh, yes, sopping wet. Well, for once I have the problem of overwatering. As I lift these up, they're really, really heavy too. So I can tell that they're just really super saturated. Another clue that I had overwatered is I started to have an issue with fungus gnats. So we know that fungus gnats love to breed in the top here, and they like that moisture. So if you start to see a lot of fungus gnats, it's not because things are dried up like a desert, it's because they're getting plenty of moisture here. So that was another clue for me. So I have these adorable little tongs that I also got from Gardener's Supply, not a sponsored video, by the way, just telling you what works well for me. In these particular cells, these work really, really well. Now, this is where it's going to get to be tough. I want to get rid of a lot of this really damp soil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna pinch my little plant out. I'm gonna come over to my garbage bag. I'm gonna grow 6 more arms so that I can do this easily. Oh no, can't do that, okay. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna hold this over the garbage bag. And I'm gonna go, okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just gently, 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 gently going to get down to the roots in that plant. And then I'm gonna line those guys up in my new potting mix here. So, you know, maybe this will help with the fungus gnats too. We're gonna get rid of some of the wet potting mix. Did I say it's going to help with the potting mix? It's going to help with the fungus gnats because it's getting rid of this wet potting mix that they're breeding in. Now I also ordered some of those little sticky yellow pieces that you can put in here to trap the fungus gnats. So I'll start those right away and hopefully that will help. I'm really hopeful we can save these guys because they were doing so well. But live and learn. It's my first year growing geraniums, and evidently I'm going to have to watch the watering. I am finding that the grow lights are working really, really well, and it is just so cheerful to see things growing here, even though we still have some snow outside. Okay, and I feel like these have a pretty decent root system. It's not like all the roots are breaking off completely. You know, if they were completely rotted here, the tops would just lift right off and they wouldn't stay attached to those roots. So I think we might have gotten these in time. Let's hope. And this is a lot of work, but you know what? That's okay. These little seeds are totally worth it when I have beautiful geraniums. Okay. So I'll be back with you in a few minutes, and I'm just going to keep taking all these little guys out. So all of those little geranium plants are now sitting in here. I thought that the root masses looked pretty good in 2 of the trays. In the one tray that had the worst turning red leaves, reddish colored leaves, they were pretty small, those roots, so I don't know if they're going to make it. Now, a great question is, why don't we just like let them dry out a little bit here rather than go through all this work replanting? So first of all, I have let them dry out a bit. It's not really making a huge difference. The other thing is, now I really feel like we have some fungus issues going on here, or some of the mold growth. So getting rid of any of the potting mix that's harboring any of that is going to be helpful. And the other thing is, just from what I have learned in past experience, from what I've seen other people do too, this is often the best way to save a real drowning plant. If you have a plant that just is so oversaturated, putting it in a fresh situation, it almost seems to give it that new life. Now, these trays, another reason that I love them is they are dishwasher safe. So I'm going to let this dry out a little bit so that it dumps out easier. Right now it's not dumping out all this extra potting mix, and I'll clean them out the best I can, but then I can run them through a sani cycle on our dishwasher and make sure that anything is really killed. Along that lines, one of the things that I've heard of, if you want to, before you plant your seeds or before you repot something, if you really want to make sure that your potting mix doesn't have any of those annoying fungus gnats breeding in it, you can boil hot water and actually dump that in your potting mix to kill anything in it, and then cool it off and then use it. I have never tried that myself, but the truth is, the reason we get fungus gnats is because it comes in that potting mix that you have. So it certainly seems like it would make sense to me, and we all know what a pain they are to have in your house. So you might choose to try that. Now, this particular batch of impatiens seems to be quite happy with all the water that it's been getting. So I just took out the wicking mat underneath, emptied the water out. I'm just going to let these sit like this and see how they continue to do. So this is some of the potting mix that I did pre-moisten, because we know that starting it with completely dry potting mix, which I was a little tempted to do because I want them to dry out, isn't usually the best idea, just because we want to fill in any air holes here, and we want to make sure that we're packed in pretty well. So you want it to like loosely stay together when you squeeze it, but make sure that it's not like dripping water. Okay. Because I have all my little seedlings in here, it's a little tricky. I'm going to do a few at a time. Now, this is going to be really, really important not to disrupt their roots much. So you can see they have a pretty good root base there. I didn't put nearly as much of the potting mix in here, and then I'm just going to gently pat them in. Okay, because remember, there's little root hairs on all of the bigger roots, and you can't really see those root hairs, but they poke out from the thicker root parts, and that's the part that sucks up the water. And if you're really rough with them, you sort of strip the roots of their little root hairs, and you don't want to do that. That does not make the roots of your plants happy. So we want to be really gentle. And that's why a lot of times I left some of the potting mix on those roots so that I wasn't disrupting the root hair part. There we go. If the potting mix falls off on its own, that's okay, but you don't want to brush it with your fingers. And I'm just tucking them in. and silently apologizing to each one for getting it wrong. But gardeners do the best they can. We're going to try to save them. What seems hopeful is that there are some green leaves on most of these still, so I'm hoping that we caught it in time. And these will be pretty good. Now there are, I believe, 2 different kinds planted here, and I did move the little tags over. However, I think I have now gotten them messed up, so we might have to wait until they really bloom until we know what color they're going to be, but I liked all the colors, so it will be fine. Okay, so now that I've replanted them, I'm down to 2 trays. Remember that 3rd tray was half impatiens anyway, and then there were some empty cells in each of them that hadn't grown. So this is kind of nice. I have the 2 trays of geraniums now. Now my first instinct is, okay, let's water them. But I think what I'm gonna do is, because the potting mix was pre-moistened, I'm gonna let them be for a day or 2. And then what I'll do is I'll just water from the bottom, putting a little in here and letting it absorb. And then rather than let it sit in any that is extra, I'm gonna dump out the bottom tray. So I'll give it 15 to 20 minutes. It can take up what it needs. And then I'm going to let it dry out again. Geraniums, and I know this from when they're in the pots outside, that they really do okay. The large ones being watered maybe once a week. Now, I haven't done them from seeds before, so I don't know what that equivalent is for tiny little plants like this, but I do think that I was being an overprotective seed mother here and watering them because I wanted them to do well. Now, let me give you an update on how the other seeds are doing too. So let's take a look at how the coleus are doing. These are the coleus seeds that were started 2 weeks ago, and you can see that they're getting a little bigger. They're doing very well. And then this tray are the coleus seeds that I planted a week ago. So I'm just looking under the humidity dome now. I can see that it's still nice and damp, and sure enough, a lot of them have started to sprout, so I can open up the humidity dome a bit and let them have some fresh air. But overall, I'm still gonna leave it on a little bit longer, but things are coming along great. I think we've done a great job today of saving the baby geranium plants. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Good? Okay, now let's do a thumb.